Sheriff Boyd, welcome to State House. We're really happy to have you on the program.
Well, thanks for having me.
Super important. Our viewers and listeners, we're trying to give them the best information on the border. There's a lot of information that gets out there, particularly on sort of legacy media for the most part, cable. But we're trying to really get down to, where the people are, what's happening, in the cities, in the counties, how is that affecting the taxpayers? And you're right at the forefront. So we really are interested in hearing how you're having to deal with the flow of all the illegal immigrants into the state of Texas over the last, 8-10 years, but particularly in the last 4, and how your department is being assisted by by other folks. I know that you were very much involved in the Operation Lone Star and making that work, and everybody certainly appreciates that work. And so I'm going to kind of open it up and let you to sort of start to tell me everything about that process and what's happening here in Goliad County.
Well, for your viewers who don't know, Goliad is on Highway 59. We're halfway between Laredo and Houston. But to be quite honest with you, most of our traffic that's cartel related isn't coming out of Laredo, because that typically goes up through San Antonio. Most of our traffic is coming out of the Rio Grande Valley. And so I've got 31 years in law enforcement, but I just became the sheriff here January 2021, and which is, of course, same time the Biden administration took office. We've always had issues with bailouts. We've always had issues with smuggling of people and drugs and various contraband, whether it be money or guns or different things like that. But what we saw in 2021 was a unprecedented spike in activity, to the point where I would say we were overrun. We were in bailouts anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week. And if somebody doesn't know what a bailout is, that's where I initiate a traffic stop. The vehicle runs instead of pulling over. They usually drive through a fence somewhere into the brush. They try to get away from us as best they can, drive somewhere where they believe we will not follow. And then they bail out of the vehicle. Like a covey of quail, the doors open and they go in all different directions. And they take off, and we're out looking for them in the woods or in the brush. And that's typically what a bailout looks like.
Okay.
The first one we had here was, I came into office January 1st. That month, I got a new truck outfitted. I got my lights on it. I had a couple of complaints about people running stop signs in town. So I thought, I'll be a good sheriff. I'm going to go watch these stop signs and stop some cars, get people to quit running these stop signs. Right here behind the sheriff's office, almost within sight of where we're actually sitting, second vehicle I go to stop that rolls through a stop sign is a Camaro. And I get into this low-speed pursuit with them, and then they take off down a dead-end road and drive into somebody's backyard and wreck out into somebody's truck that's parked in their backyard. And there were 16 people in a Chevy Camaro. Oh. And, yeah, they bailed out. We wound up catching 4 of them there in the yard. The rest of them head off into the brush. And at that time, we're looking. We try to find them, and we go through, and we didn't quite realize the network of people that the cartel have in our area and their ability to recover the people that jump out from these bailouts.
Even here in Goliad.
Oh, everywhere. They have
the whole route.
And that's part of the problem. Part of the problem with the border problem is it's not necessarily just the border. The border is the easy part. We all know there's a problem at the border. The border is not only porous, but the Biden administration basically opened the floodgates, welcomed, and went into business with the cartels and the NGOs to help the cartels make billions of dollars, bringing what turned into slaves right here in the United States of America. And also to bring their drugs and all their other stuff into this country. And so, yes, they're everywhere. The real problem is the fact that the cartels, they're contractors, they're subcontractors, they're affiliates, and the otherwise legitimate businesses that are actually assisting the cartels by laundering money or storing product in exchange for money. That's the problem. The cartels are embedded all across the United States. It doesn't matter if you're in in Brownsville, doesn't matter if you're in Goliad, doesn't matter if you're in Columbus, Ohio, or if you're in Helena, Montana. The cartel is in your town. No matter how small, no matter where you're at, the cartel has somebody. Does that mean there's a cartel member in your town? No, it doesn't. But what it means is you either have cartel, a contractor, or a subcontractor living in your community. And that's what we found. They are everywhere.
So it's a criminal enterprise of, national proportions. I mean, we know about organized crime, but usually they're pretty regional, and this is U.S. wide from Mexico all the way to the Canadian border and probably beyond.
And it's worldwide because you look at New Generation cartel. They're running in last we heard like 48 countries. I think the Gulf Cartel operates in like 54 countries. It's a worldwide enterprise. And these folks are sophisticated. I mean, when you think of the cartels, think of an international corporation. Think of a Walmart with the distribution network, compartmentalized. That's how they function. They function in a very compartmentalized but very logistically complex manner that requires them to have a presence, whether it's visual or it's covert or overt, everywhere that they operate. And they have that throughout. They're to the point to where, I'm sure you're familiar with the plaza system. In Mexico, the government leases territory to criminal organizations, and they'll come to you and say, Frank, you want to lease this territory for, $5 million a month cash. We'll let you run X amount of pounds of marijuana, X amount of keys of meth, X amount of keys of cocaine, and you can run this many illegal aliens through to get them smuggled through the border. Anything above that, you pay an additional tax on. That's how the Mexican government functions.
Yeah.
Always has.
Yeah.
And so the cartel has replicated that system right here in the United States. And the United States is now broken up into plazas, overlapping plazas from the cartels that then basically provide authorization to certain organizations to sell certain products within that geographic area. This area here, Gulf Cartel, at one point in time when we were in Victoria County, they leased this territory to the Houston division of Mexican Mafia to be the sole authorized provider of pure cocaine.
I was just going to ask you, when you're talking about these overlapping territories and these different groups working together, so you're talking about pretty much every criminal enterprise that wants to make money has cut some kind of contract or subcontract deal with the Gulf Cartel. Okay.
Yeah, because everybody talks about the Mexican Mafia, Texas Syndicate, Aryan Brotherhood, now even the Bandidos and the Mongols. They're all just contractors for the Mexican cartels. They've all been relegated to contractor status. They're no longer what people used to think of them as the prison gangs.
Yeah.
Now they're contractors. Historically, the cartels would not do business with motorcycle gangs because they were too unpredictable. But even the motorcycle gangs have come into line because the money is so good.
Good money,
it's
right.
phenomenal. So now even the motorcycle gangs, whether it's Bandidos, Calaveras, whether it's Mongols or Hells Angels, they're all just a bunch of contractors now. They've gone to work for somebody else. They're no longer the free agents they once were. And so that's what we're dealing with. It's the complexity of the layers, because the guy who picks up, and I'll just use human smuggling, for example. You have the cartel in Mexico. You'll have a liaison in Mexico who liaisons between the cartel and the contractor smuggling organization in the state of Texas that is going to deliver those people from the border to Houston. But you have, under that contractor, you have somebody who picks up the people at the border, takes them a couple miles in, do some trails, whether it be by foot or in a car, to a hotel or a business or a house. That person doesn't know anybody else in the organization, doesn't know the liaison.
They just have one job.
They have one job. Somebody else picks them up from there and then gets them south of the checkpoint. And once they're south of the checkpoint, they drop them off. Then the coyote takes them, walks them around. The guy who took them to be dropped off doesn't know who's going to pick them up in Falfurrias or wherever they're going to be picked up. And so it's very compartmentalized. So when you catch somebody, it's difficult to work your way up the chain. And so that's kind of what we've been working on. Okay. But it's extremely difficult because it's a very complex organization. And I'll go back to this whole plaza system. In Victoria, what we saw is it was so robust that the cartel came in, made Houston Mexican Mafia the sole distributor of pure cocaine in Victoria and the surrounding counties. Well, at that point, what they did was you had the cartel at the top, Mexican Mafia, but in the Mexican Mafia's chain of workers, the cartel also sprinkles in their own workers so that you can't short the cartel any money.
Make sure they're watching.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're above and below you.
Yeah.
But not only
I was
that,
just going to ask that question. How are they enforcing this, this loose arrangement? Well, it's not even a loose arrangement, but this arrangement. So they have people inside their organizations making sure that's not happening.
That's correct.
Yeah.
They have their own network to ensure that their profit is insured. Let's put it that way. But they go so far as they were going out and buying cocaine on the streets of Victoria and testing it for purity. And if you were selling pure cocaine, but you were not an authorized distributor, they would give you a warning that you're not an authorized distributor of pure cocaine. You have to cut your cocaine with at least 50% of a non-cocaine product, usually a powdered baby laxative is what they like to use. Mm-hmm. Or you can't sell. And some of the drug dealers, their mentality was, well, I don't know who you think you are, and I'll sell what I want. And we had some of those drug dealers, they just disappear.
Yeah.
So when you talk about homicide rates, you have to realize the cartel doesn't leave bodies for us. People just vanish. And there are people vanishing all across the United States as a result of the cartel's presence. And it doesn't matter if you're in Victoria, Goliad, Brownsville, or Seattle. It really doesn't matter. It's happening everywhere. And I think that's part of the problem. Everybody focuses on the border. They're not understanding that the border is just one piece of it.
Yeah.
Securing the border is going to be the easiest part of the upcoming administration's problems. Because securing the border is a linear thing that Border Patrol knows how to do. And the leadership coming in under Tom Holman and Rodney Scott, they know how to do this. They're going to get it done. The real challenge is getting the cartel, their contractors and their subcontractors rounded up within the United States, and then also going after those businesses that are laundering money or storing product or utilizing the slave labor that belongs to the cartels right here in the United States.
Well, so that brings up a question in my mind. So now I agree with you. I think Tom Holman and the administration is going to, they'll get the border closed, and they'll start I don't know how they're going to do it, but the deportation process, which you'll have to definitely be involved in. Every sheriff is overwhelmed with probably thinking about, how they're going to help to do that, because they have to be rounded up, and that's a lot of work and a lot of manpower. And let's assume for a second that they make a big dent in that process and they cut it off, and the product is not able to get, both human product and drugs able to get across the border. What do you see happening over here on this side? Do they just find another way around it? Or is it they find a way to make profit on the deportation side of things? I mean, I can't imagine that they're not, but what do you see?
Look at the cartel like water. Water takes the path of least resistance. It flows where you're not. And that's what the cartel will do. The cartel is going to try to figure out a way. The goal is to deny them the profit margin that they want. And so what I see is, I see a complex problem coming, because the states that have legalized marijuana have basically welcomed the cartel into their states with open arms. The do-gooders think, if we legalize marijuana, the cartel won't have marijuana, won't have the profit. That's not the truth. You go to Oklahoma, you go to California, you go to Colorado. What has happened is the cartel has come in and taken over those operations domestically.
Right.
And they do it ruthlessly. And people are disappearing in those places. And it's not just the Mexican cartels, it's also the Chinese. Talking to legislators in Oklahoma that have asked me to help with some of the stuff they've had going on up there, that's their two biggest problems, the cartels and the Chinese. Because the Chinese come in and just throw a bunch of money at you and buy you out.
Yeah.
The cartel comes in and says, we'll give you this amount of money, or you can work for us, or we burn your house down.
Or you die.
Yes, you disappear. And so, and if you're a dispensary, because even under the Obama administration, this is what they found through their investigations in California, is out in California, every county had a number of dispensaries that they authorized.
Right.
Well, the estimate was that every dispensary is selling somewhere between 100 and 1,000% more product than they were supposed to be selling legally. Because as soon as you open up a dispensary, not only were you paying off the corrupt officials in California to get your license, because that was a huge deal that came out under the Obama administration, investigated it, confirmed it, but did nothing about it. The cartels would come in and say, congratulations, Frank, you've got your dispensary. You're authorized to sell, 200 pounds of blah, 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 a month. But you're also going to sell our product. And you're going to sell our product first. And it's cash. And if you don't sell our product, then we're going to burn your stuff down. And that's how it functions. So the cartel, the legalization of marijuana actually strengthened the cartel's presence in the United States of America.
Yeah.
And so those are challenges we're going to have to face in this upcoming administration in order to, solve this problem. Because unfortunately, everybody wants to say, yay, Trump won, it's all over, and we celebrate victory. If that's the way you look at it, Trump's win was not the end-all battle.
Yeah.
The winning of Trump and coming into office is merely the beginning. Look at it like warfare. We've landed on the beaches in Normandy. We still have to take Europe. That's how this is. That's all we've done. We're on the beach. Doesn't mean we've won. We have not defeated the evil. We have not defeated the crime. That must be done. And now is the time for work to begin. And people need to understand that. And that's what my fear is, because of human nature, is people think we won, we're good. And I have my friends tell me that, oh, it's all good now. Yeah. No, it's not. The work begins now. The people have given you the torch. You must use it, and you must go forward, and you must earn it, because we work for the people, and we must do the will of the people. And the people have said, this is what we want, and we're tired of this problem. We need to get off our butts, and we need to get it done. We have to work harder now than we did in the last 4 years. In the last 4 years, trust me when I say, was a lot of work, because the Biden administration shoved the cartels down our throat with them being in business with them,
right,
being their number one champion. We now have to move towards getting the cartels out. And that's my biggest fear in the state of Texas. I already have legislators saying, oh, Trump won. We're not going to pass any border legislation. We're good. We'll wash our hands unless the governor gives us a bill to pass. We're not going to do anything. That is a failed model. Why would we have fought the last 4 years to lay down and then turn the initiative over to the cartels for the next 4 years? It's just ridiculous, because the border is not the only problem. It's the domestic front. We must secure the domestic front. And if we're going to win this battle of good versus evil and for the future of Texas and the United States of America, then we have to be willing to fight it to the end. And unfortunately, that's not human nature. And the legislature, a lot of people in the legislature want to say, oh, it's all good. Trump won, all good. It doesn't function that way.
Let me ask you this question, because that's a very good point. I looked through all the legislation that's been filed so far. Granted, they're going to file legislation throughout the process. And for our viewers and listeners, January 14th was the first day of the legislative session. It runs for 140 days every 2 years. So it's a very truncated process, very tight, and a lot of times not a lot gets done because of infighting, which we may see this session as well. However, when I looked at the legislation that was pre-filed, and even up to the last 2 days, the early part of the last 2 days of session, I didn't see a lot of border bills. To your point, I was really surprised. I thought there would be a lot of, and I'm assuming there is going to be, but what needs to be done? That's really the thing, is what needs to be done. What should the legislature do to help people like you get to this next phase? I mean, like you said, the fight starts now, but what do you need to finish the fight?
What I need is a complete change in mindset and methodology of how we conduct law enforcement in the state of Texas. We need it across the United States. The problem is we've piecemealed everything. We have a problem, we send DPS to the border. As a result, we have no DPS here. DPS is not geared, nor are they trained to conduct normal law enforcement operations. So they spend most of their time catching people, then releasing them to Border Patrol, who releases them into the country.
Right.
So basically, we're spending a lot of money just to help be part of the logistical issue that is continuing to bring people across. And it's not DPS's fault. They're not geared to it. But the problem is, under the previous leadership of DPS, it was chasing the money. During the Biden administration, it was DPS is going to work the border. We're the border experts. We're going to go down there and we're going to take care of it. Trump came into office, the border fizzles out. Well, we're the school security experts. We're going to take care of the school security. Then, Trump goes out, Biden comes in. Oh, we're the border security experts. No, we need to actually use the right tools for the right job. Because if I try to use a hammer, to insert a lag screw, it's not going to function very well. And that's what we've been doing. We're using the wrong tool. What we need is we need to refocus our efforts and ask ourselves, what is the real problem and what needs to be done to fix it and who is capable of fixing it? And how do we do it with the least amount of financial impact to the citizens of the state of Texas? Because that's a huge deal. And so that's one of the things that we've proposed. And we worked with Guillen's office the last session. And I've talked with Guillen since then. We've worked with, some of the other folks in the legislature.
Good man, yeah.
And that's why we were proposing the Texas Department of Homeland Security during the last session. But instead of standing up a robust state agency, what we said was, why don't we go back to start the Texas Department of Homeland Security? Do not put it under DPS, because historically, anything you put under DPS eventually gets dissolved and DPS holds on to the money. It's the nature of it, of the organization. And said, but instead, why don't we have the Department of Homeland Security broken out into geographic regions that, instead of being the traditional geographic regions of DPS, which make no sense except politically, why don't we base those regions on the geographic control of organized crime and the travel routes of organized crime, so that we funnel everything to the right people, so the intelligence comes? Because I'll give you a good example. I get emails every day through DPS, and they're intelligence emails or information emails, however you want to label them. And I'll find out that Pedro's writing hot checks in El Paso. There's a porch pirate stealing stuff in Abilene. And there's a shoplifter in Selma, Texas, hitting Dollar Generals. And once again, there's, somebody's wanted in El Paso, or there's a stolen car in Dallas. I don't care. I'm in Goliad. Give me intelligence that provides me with something that's actionable.
You can't do anything about
or
those other folks right now. That's right.
Exactly. But that's the game that is played at the state. Because then DPS can go up, McCraw could go up and say, well, I gave this many pieces of intelligence to local law enforcement last year. What he doesn't tell the legislature is 99.9% of it was absolute junk that did no good for us. He just clogged up our in baskets, to the point where most people create a rule that everything from DPS goes off into their trash automatically, so that they don't have to see it anymore. So what we had proposed was, under Texas Department of Homeland Security, which already exists by statute.
There is.
It was under the Texas Division of Governor's Division of Emergency Management.
Okay.
Jack Colley was in charge of it.
Okay.
When Jack died, Steve McCraw was brought in to head that up before he took over DPS and merged the two.
Okay.
And so
now that department is merged into DPS.
Yes.
Exactly where we
separated out.
All right.
Take the Fusion Center, put it under the Texas Department of Homeland Security. Take the Joint Operations Information Centers, put them under the Department of Homeland Security. And instead of a huge, robust state agency, let's use the task force model that we've created under Operation Lone Star Task Force. Mm-hmm. and let's expand that across the state. And then that way, instead of the taxpayers having to pay a whole bunch of money to hire new state employees, which is very expensive, you give grants to local agencies and they can assign 1 or 2 deputies through that grant program to the Texas Department of Homeland Security to work combined forced efforts under the state's umbrella of authority. And so then those resources can be moved wherever they're needed. But not only that, but we can ensure that the intelligence about smuggling organizations, drug smuggling, anything else, criminal activity, is funneled to the right places instead of just a shotgun pattern that we see right now.
Yeah.
And so there's a smarter way to do it that will save the taxpayers money. But we just haven't enacted it. And I understand, there's things that I don't have to consider that the governor has to consider, or that the legislators consider that I don't have to consider. But what we're doing has made a heck of a dent on the border, but we have not eliminated the cartel's presence across the state of Texas.
I mean, you're
They're
doing what you
still
can
here.
for the people that elected you. You're doing your job, but that may not be that might be helping anybody down further south.
Well,
or
and
north.
that's it. But we've seen the results of that model of law enforcement, because in 22, when we received the funds from the governor's office, which I always say, Governor Abbott threw us a lifeline. We were drowning. He saved us. He really did.
That's through
OLS? Operation Lone Star Grant.
Okay.
And so, and I went to that first meeting and proposed the methodology for funding that, with the governor when he asked those questions. And so, because I give him credit, he called the people on the streets in and said, how do we fix this? And we gave him recommendations and he followed them. So, but instead of just me taking that money and conducting operations only in Goliad and ignoring the counties around me, I asked a bunch of other sheriffs, why don't we come together, combine our forces? We're all getting grant funds from the state. Let's take those grant funds and let's benefit as much of our region as we can. And so we started sharing intelligence amongst ourselves.
Okay.
We started sharing resources. We would go conduct operations. If you were in another county and you had a lot going on, I would take those Operation Lone Star resources that the governor's paying for, not my local taxpayers, not directly anyway. And those resources will then go help in your county, and we'd knock
And y'all
down.
are doing that on your own.
Yeah. And this was just something we came up with.
Yeah.
And so we conduct operations all across South Texas. We go down the border, help out. And so we have 52 local law enforcement agencies that are a member of Operation Lone Star Task Force.
Okay.
Not everybody even receives grant fundings, but there's 52 of us across the state, all the way from the border up to near the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we help each other out, but our focus is denying transnational criminal organizations, their contractors and subcontractors, the ability to freely operate within our communities. That's what our focus is. And so we've taken that and we've used it. And so it was very successful. We went from 3 to 5 bailouts a week in this county in 2021, early 2022, to we had like 1 in 2023 and none in 2024.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And so we talked to the Department of Homeland Security, because not only do we have the 52 local agencies, as you saw a while ago, HSI is here helping us on an investigation right now that we called them in on last night. So we have Department of Homeland Security, we have Border Patrol, even Coast Guard helps us out sometimes. We work joint operations with Coast Guard. We work with Texas Department of Public Service. I mean, you got Vincent Luciano, the regional commander for DPS here, who's an outstanding man who always wants to help out, and he's in for the fight. And so he sends his troops to help out and his investigators to help out. So we all come together and we work together. And so I was asking Border Patrol and Department of Homeland Security, I'm like, man, we went from all these bailouts and nothing. And they told us, no, our intel tells them they know who's in the task force and they know who's not. They said they are going around you. They said the counties to the west of us did not join in. So they would come up, hit Highway 72, and drive all the way up through Carnes, DeWitt, Lavaca,
So
and into Columbus.
They just changed the route.
They knew who was working and who wasn't.
Yeah.
And so they changed their routes.
Now, let me ask you a question. It just popped in my head. So why wouldn't these other organizations join? Did they just not think they had a problem?
There's a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's political. Sometimes the commissioner's court doesn't want them to join, or the county judge.
Yeah.
Sometimes the will of the people in their community doesn't want them to join. And then sometimes it's because it's a lot of work. And not everybody's up for a lot of work. I don't care if you're on the board of directors. I'm sure you've been on boards of directors. What's the old saying? 10% of the people do over 90% of the work.
That's exactly right.
It's the same way.
It was usually me when I was on a board. I understand.
Yeah. Before I became the sheriff, I was president of the Water Supply Corporation. And when the other board members realized I had to get off because you couldn't hold 2 elected positions at once, some of them got off the board, and I asked why. They said, because I don't want to get stuck with all the work you do.
Stuck with all the work, exactly.
Well, it's that way.
Yeah.
You have those issues, and so you've got a variety of things because it's a lot of work. Because I don't work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I go sometimes 3 weeks plus without going home for supper because there's work to be done. And I'm here to serve the people in my community and in a broader sense, the people of Texas. I mean, I'm 7th generation here. Yeah. So I had family when this was Mexico. So we've been here a long time. And so I feel an obligation to everybody in the state of Texas to do everything I can. Not everybody feels that same obligation.
Yeah.
And so, fortunately for us, Karnes County's got a new sheriff, so they're coming on board. Lavaca County has a new sheriff. He's already joined. He's retired, Department of Homeland Security. He and I used to work cartel cases back when I was in Victoria. Best investigator I've ever met in my life. The new sheriff over on the other side of Lavaca County, he wants to come on board. So we've got more and more sheriffs joining on board, and also police chiefs are coming on. We've added some police departments recently.
That's good, yeah.
And so we're trying to basically build our own, Great Wall of China, so to speak.
Yeah.
Across. We've expanded as far west as Kerr County, and we have some interest in far west Texas joining, and we have some agencies around Houston.
Well, to your just listening to you, to your point, until you have sort of a wall of people across the state, they're just going to keep going around. They seem to know everything. They're sophisticated enough to know how to get around, sort of public funded organizations. They have all the information. So you have to have everybody across the state stand up, right, and join. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Well, it works, but just not to the degree it possibly could.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it works because it greatly decreases in those areas. But even if we got everybody in Texas to join along the southern part of the state all the way out to El Paso, which would never happen just because of the politics, they go to New Mexico and go around. But now we have sheriffs in New Mexico who are saying, hey, hold on. We like what you guys are doing. We'd like to replicate that. Can we meet? And so we're meeting with sheriffs from New Mexico, prosecutors from New Mexico. We're meeting with folks from Ohio and North Dakota and North Carolina and Oklahoma that are like, hey, this is a pretty good program. We'd like to replicate it or at least adapt it for our use.
Yeah.
And so, as a matter of fact, we're working on a call here pretty soon. Met with Tom Homan last week, and he's asked to be part of that call. Texas Board Czar Mike Banks wants to be part of that call. Mm-hmm. And so I know AG Ken Paxton has expressed interest through his office in being part of that effort.
That's good.
And so I think we're headed in the right direction. We just have to keep the momentum and keep everybody focused. Because what you can't have is it turning into a money grab. It can't be about money. It must be about the mission. And that's what we always say. And I think that was one of the things the governor's office really liked and why the governor has provided us so much support as a task force, because their office saw something they'd never seen before. The legislature can only give out so much money across the state for certain efforts. Well, they gave out the money for the 23 grant year. So when it comes to what we're doing as a task force, you can't let it devolve and become about the money. It has to be about the mission. And that's one of the reasons that I think the governor has supported us so much. And so has Mike Banks as the Board Czar, who's been very supportive of our efforts and actually comes out to our operations sometimes.
That's good.
which is not this last grant, but the grant before. The governor's office told us we had done something they'd never seen before. And they told us each how much money we were going to get for the grant. So we held a meeting and we created a spreadsheet. Goliad's getting this much, this place's getting this much. And we looked around the room, we said, who doesn't have the money they need to conduct their operations? We had a handful of agencies say, man, I'm short. I need this in order to conduct. I need to be able to pay this person, So what we did was we just looked around and said, okay, who can give up money to help these agencies conduct their operations? I know I gave up $100,000 out of my grant funds. Another county gave up $100,000. Clayburgh gave up. There were a handful of us gave up money. And we went back to the governor's office and said, hey, listen, I know you were going to give me this much money, but here's an Excel spreadsheet, and it shows all the money you're giving each one of the agencies, who's willing to give up how much, where it will come from out of their grant if you approve, and send it to this agency for this purpose.
You're actually showing them where it's going to be effective.
And they looked at us, they said, nobody's ever tried to give back money before.
Just going to say.
I said, it's not about the money, it's about the mission. Yeah. And so they said, well, let us get back to you. And they come back and said, all right, we'll do it. All right, excellent. So they took the money from us, gave it to those in need, and we all came together and we conducted another year's worth of operations. And so this year, when this last grant came out, they sent me the spreadsheet ahead of time and said, hey, why don't y'all meet? Here's what our preliminary is. Why don't y'all meet, figure out what you need, and then that way, before we do the awards, we can go ahead and make the adjustments.
That's awesome.
So that's exactly what we did.
That's working. That's incredible that you've built.
Yeah.
So that task force, of which it really, it's incredible that y'all have been able to do this all on your own, essentially. You're getting funded, but making it work is...
I'd say less than half of us actually are even funded.
Yeah.
But they're still participating.
They're participating. Well, and there is a $24 billion surplus, so maybe a little bit of that'll go towards this if they're listening. My question is, so that the Homeland Security, the Texas Homeland Security idea, is kind of taking this task force and making it more formal, so that you have all of the resources to do the research, to figure out all of the different pieces to the cartel business, where they're heading, their routes, their all the kind of products that they're bringing into and where it's, because it's going to change, obviously. As you get better at some places in Texas, they're going to move, so you got to be able to be nimble.
We'll call it the OODA loop.
Yeah.
Observe, orient, decide, and act. That's what they used to teach us in SWAT. It's an old fighter pilot deal. But,
that's interesting.
And we always say that you reset somebody's OODA loop when you do something they don't expect. The cartel does it to us all the time.
Yeah.
We're trying to do it to them.
Yeah. I think it's an amazing idea, and I'm wondering if there's any support that you're finding in Austin for that idea. Is that something that's going to bubble up? Are we going to see anything about that this session?
I don't know. I know there's some bills that are in the works, but I don't know. We pushed last time, but they all fell short. I will tell you that Guillen has probably been our number one champion for trying to push that through. He's got other folks that are working with him, but he's been really good with law enforcement and trying to get us what we need. We have other folks. Senator Colcourse is really good. Senator Morrison was really good. I know Bob Hall.
Two good senators
pressed.
Right there. Strong.
There was a lot of stuff that a lot of people that came forward, but it just fell short this last go round. So, and I don't know what they're going to do this time, but we'll just have to see. We're gonna, no matter what, we're gonna push forward and try to persevere. I anticipate that the state funding will eventually phase out to some extent in lieu of federal funding, or the state funding will be augmented by the feds under the current, the incoming administration. And so, but we will just have to kind of wait and see. But for us, it's about going after them, because the interdiction, for us, the interdiction is the easy part. It's the investigative side that's extremely difficult because those investigations take a long time. And I know that when we first came in, we uncovered a large smuggling organization that, according to the Department of Homeland Security, was bringing no less than 100,000 people. This one contractor bringing over 100,000 people a year through us. And it took us 2 years working with Homeland Security to dismantle that organization, at least the upper portions of the organization. And we basically rendered them inoperable for quite some time. As a matter of fact, we would find some of the people that escaped our indictments during our operations in Kinney County and Live Oak County, and they were running dope trying to gather up money to get their human smuggling organization back underway. And so it is those investigations take a lot of time, and I think that's where we're going to have a lot of our focus internally in the future. Interdiction is great. We're still going to need it because human intelligence is the number one driver of investigations. But those investigations often get overlooked, not only by law enforcement, by legislators. Everybody thinks, okay, you stopped this load, you got these illegals, you got the driver. Great job. Everybody take a picture, pat yourself on the back. That's a failed model. We have to change that mindset. We have to change that methodology. We have to move forward and conduct those investigations and take them as far as we can and get as close to the cartels as we can. And that takes time. Takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. I'm in Goliad. I've got guys in Hidalgo and Starr County on a regular basis because most of our investigations lead back to Hidalgo and Starr counties. That's where the cartel has their strongholds.
Yeah.
That's where they're at. Even not in Cameron as much. We've had in Cameron, but Hidalgo is probably our number one place because the cartel's just so entrenched in that county.
Yeah, that's right.
Starr as well. But there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And so
Hidalgo's always been a problem area. Yeah.
It always has been. But, but that stuff takes a lot of time. And so the legislators need to understand that. There is no quick fix. These things are going. There are investigations we've had going on for several years that we're nowhere near the end of them just because they're so complex. And these organizations are so compartmentalized that every time you think you're there, they make a change in the organization and you take a half step back and you've got to work back through. And it's difficult because you're talking about organizations that are making billions and billions of dollars. This is not like investigating a hot check ring or a group of people stealing tractors at the John Deere dealerships around the area. This is a much more complex thing because you've got locals, you've got regional people, you've got businesses in your town, you've got businesses outside of your town. You've got the money courier who doesn't know the drug courier, who doesn't know, a whole laundry list of people. Yeah. So you've got to go find all the pieces to the puzzle. They don't come in the box. You have to go find them. Yeah. And that takes a lot of time.
That takes a lot of time. Well, I hope one of the really clear things that comes out of this discussion for our listeners and viewers is that, Goliad is not on the border. It is
180 miles from it.
180 miles from the border. And to understand that the problems are as bad here in Goliad as they are, and maybe even worse because now they're moving away from, they're getting people out of this, close to the border and getting them up as far north and moving them out to other parts. And like you said, Ohio and, all the way through the U.S. So this isn't really a South Texas border problem. It's just that happens to be where a lot of the trafficking is coming through, and I think to get people to understand that it helps overall with the funding, and obviously having, Trump win the election and his focus on the border is going to help tremendously. But I think to your point, it's just a beginning. I mean, he hasn't even, been inaugurated yet.
We're on the beach. Our feet are still wet.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, this has been incredibly important information to pass on to our listeners and viewers because they are hungry for try to understand what's going on, and I think a lot of times people listen and they don't know that they're actually affected. The money that's drawn to do the work that you have to do is coming from somewhere. There's a limited amount of money, and it's incredibly important work, but they need to think about it in those terms. And we haven't even talked about, which is not what we're here to talk about, but that doesn't even talk about what's happening in the education system and everywhere else that's impacted every time you have hundreds of thousands of people coming through illegally through your county or your city. So I really appreciate how much time you've given us to talk about this. I know you're busy. When I was coming in just to visit with you, I noticed you mentioned ago that the Homeland Security was here because you had a load of illegals that y'all were having to deal with this morning, and so that was just me just walking in, in the middle of the day. So I know you're constantly on the job here in town.
We like to stay busy. We just
You have no problem with that, right?
So we will always be out hunting because we have to be proactive. We have to protect our people because you're right. You talked about we're not on the border, but in 2021, 2022, we discovered 16 cartel stash sites in this county. That's just the ones we found. We had the largest known cartel stash site in the interior of the United States history. And that's according to the Department of Homeland Security. And so there's even though we're not on the border, there's a lot of activity.
Yeah.
And it's in all the communities. It's just whether your law enforcement goes and looks for it or not. And that's why people need to be careful who they elect. Not only the sheriff, but as county judge, commissioners, because without that entire support system and network, there's no way in the world that we could get this done. We worked close with Kinney County down Bracketville with the county attorney down there, Brent Smith, and Brent was the architect who came up with the declaration of disaster as a result of this invasion. And we were the first two counties to issue that declaration on April 21st of 2021. San Jacinto Day, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And so we issued those and then pushed hard and did everything we could with the governor to get things done.
Yeah.
And not only that, but to give the governor the political cover he needed to do the things that may not necessarily be popular without him having somebody else to step out there in the forefront and be willing to take the heat. And so, I applaud the governor and I applaud the legislature for the things they've done for us. All I ask is that they not believe that we've come to the end because we've just begun to fight.
Yeah.
And if we don't continue that fight and we don't see it to the end, then we've wasted our manpower, we've wasted our effort, and we've wasted the treasure of the people of the state of Texas.
Well, as a Texan, I appreciate everything you do, being on the front lines every day, and I know all the Texans that are listening today, are very appreciative that people like yourself, really, you put yourself out there in the front lines every single day on all your deputies and all the resources that you use. I hope you get what you need. Our job is to try and get this message out to as many people as possible. If it's the Texas Homeland Security or, organization that gets set up or something else, whatever it is, I hope you get all that. And we certainly want to be back and, report back in, a little bit of time, see if things are changing or if things got worse. We got the session going on right now. And so I'm going to be watching, and we may come back down here to get your thoughts on some of the things that are going to be passed. So please let us know if there's something else we need to be covering, because we want to make sure everybody knows all the information they need to know about what's happening on the border issue, on the immigration issue.
I thank you for coming down. God bless Texas, and remember Goliad.
That's right. This is the Goliad, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you so much, Sheriff.
Thank you.